역시 다음번 연사를 소개해 드리면요. 다음번은 캐나다입니다. 캐나다 수소산업협회가 있는데요. 거기에 마크 커비 회장님께서 캐나다 수소와 연료전지 분야를 주제로 이제 온라인으로 발표해 주실 예정입니다. 준비되면은 바로 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
I'm delighted to be here, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association at the Hydrogen Mobility and Energy Show. It's a truly great honor, and I thank you for your attention. What I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today is Canada's hydrogen and fuel cell sector and some of the activity underway in Canada. When I start with this, I like to outline two things: why hydrogen is important to Canada, and I think also it applies equally to the world, and what we need in Canada to spur commercialization. So first of all, why hydrogen is important? Well, number one, it's a strength. Canada has been involved in the sector for many years, and it's an opportunity for our companies to grow and prosper. It's also a very inclusive solution for Canadian industry and for Canadians, because hydrogen energy solutions provide choices for Canadians in how they're going to decarbonize, how they're going to handle their mobility issues. And last but not least, because it is essential to achieve net zero 2050. And this is recognized very broadly, and Canada has made a commitment to being net zero in 2050. What is needed to spur commercialization? It's similar to what was mentioned in the previous presentation. First of all, it needs senior leadership. It needs acknowledgement that hydrogen is critical, and that the country is committed to going down the path of making hydrogen and hydrogen energy solutions available. And to support that, it needs policy that can help provide a good business case for hydrogen applications. Without those policies in place, unfortunately, they will not move forward. We also say that there's a need for transformation task forces. These are when you look at an industry, let's say the urban transit industry, the steel industry, chemical industry, converting to hydrogen is a very significant change. And there needs to be task forces in place to ensure that the codes and standards issues are addressed, that the regulatory issues are addressed, and any other barriers are addressed, and that there's communications to the members in that community so they can understand what's required and how to go about it. Of course, there's need for support for hydrogen infrastructure, production, distribution, fueling stations, and support for early adopters of fueling technology. Ongoing research and development is needed, and very importantly, stimulus projects to get this underway. And I'm glad to say that there is patent movement forward in all of these areas in Canada today, and we're optimistic this is going to lead to commercialization. A little bit about the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. We're a nonprofit industry association based in Vancouver, BC. We represent companies across the country, and we are, we like to say, the voice of the sector, working on relations, marketing, communications, and education. These are our member companies, and they cover the spectrum from production, distribution, fuel cell products and services, research, and engineering services. We have some fairly well-known companies in the sector, including companies such as Ballard, Hydrogenics, Greenlight, etc. We offer, as said, products. We offer fuel cell components and services. We offer hydrogen supply, production equipment, stations. A number of companies are involved in commercializing leading-edge technologies, very extensive testing and certification, both of equipment and services. And we're involved a lot in studies around the world looking at deployment and use of hydrogen and hydrogen energy. So working on behalf of transit agencies or cities to look at how hydrogen can fit into their operations. And of course, we have many universities and researchers at the national labs involved in research and development on hydrogen issues. We have a long history in hydrogen and fuel cells, going all the way back to 1915 with an initial patent on the reduction of iron with hydrogen, and carrying on through demonstrations and projects both on the hydrogen side for green hydrogen production and operation, also for blue hydrogen. We're among the world's largest producers of blue hydrogen now, with major CO2 capture and sequestration projects underway for hydrogen plants. We of course had the Whistler Bus project, and key now is that our member companies are involved in demonstrations, strategic alliances, and partnerships around the world. So what's happening now in Canada is based on our technology leadership, the positive policy. We're seeing investment, we're seeing jobs and growth. Our exports of fuel cell and fuel cell products are growing, and we're starting to see the implementation of hydrogen energy applications in Canada. It's a very exciting period now. BC, for example, we're seeing revenues are growing. Investments in research is over $90 million in the area. We've got employment growth, and it's a significant contributor to the British Columbia economy. Looking at government support, we have both federal and provincial government roles to play. At the federal level, we have met the mandate for being net neutral by 2050. We're part of the Clean Energy Ministerial. A hydrogen strategy for Canada is due out in the next month, and we're looking forward eagerly to seeing that. We have in place a price on carbon. We have a clean fuel standard that's pending, and these provide very important incentive for the adoption of hydrogen. We have funding support in place for ZEV buses and for fueling stations. And then at the provincial and at the federal level, we also have, at the provincial level, we also have activity. BC and Quebec are leaders in this, with hydrogen roadmaps in place and support for hydrogen fuel cells. Alberta also has spent over $3 billion on carbon capture and sequestration, which leads them to have a very large capacity and a very low cost for capturing CO2 and sequestering it, enabling the production of low carbon intensity hydrogen from fossil fuels. And in other provinces too, we have growing support. Projects underway across the country. I won't go into the details on them, but such as the Air Liquide expansion. It's a 20 megawatt electrolyzer expansion at a liquid hydrogen plant in Quebec that's been running since the late 80s. And so we're seeing, and that plant supplies hydrogen across North America. As I mentioned, we have 6 now hydrogen plants in Alberta that are blue hydrogen, sequestering the CO2 that they produce, and a number of other projects across the country. Where we see opportunities between Canada and Korea, well, obviously supply of fuel cell products and services. Our companies can help in that area, hydrogen equipment and processes, engineering and market studies. Also, I think opportunities for investment and partnering. Canadian companies are bringing forward new technologies and are looking for investment partners, and our existing companies are looking for partnership agreements. And then I think one of the more interesting areas we can start looking at in the future is the opportunity for hydrogen export, because Canada is currently a low-cost producer of low carbon intensity hydrogen. Touching a little bit on that, I mentioned we have a carbon sequestration project in Edmonton, Alberta. That enables the production of low carbon intensity hydrogen at a very low cost, about $1 per kilogram. And there is the opportunity to pipeline that. We've done some quick studies on the cost to do that. And what it would allow us to do is to be able to supply low carbon intensity hydrogen to Tidewater at less than $2 per kilogram, which we think is and that's Canadian. So a very interesting opportunity to be able to export low cost hydrogen. Obviously very large capital intense projects. We require multi-billion-dollar investments in hydrogen production and in pipeline capacity, but quite doable in terms of the technology status today. As mentioned, we have an advantage in Canada in our cost of hydrogen production. And this is a study that was done externally, and it's a bit of an eye chart. I do apologize. It shows the cost for energy and the cost to produce in green hydrogen from renewables. And as you can see, due to Canada's very low cost hydro, we would be among the world's low cost producers of green hydrogen. And then if you look at blue hydrogen, and this includes the sequestration cost, due to our low cost of natural gas, we'd also be in a very low cost position for the production of blue hydrogen. I'd like to finish by mentioning that we also have a conference coming up in September. We invite people to participate in that. That will be a virtual event taking place based in Vancouver, but open to everybody around the world. And to end up by saying that Canada's a center of competency, where commercialization is underway. It's a very large economic opportunity, as we all are aware, and that we are open and ready to start working with partners around the world. I thank you, and I encourage you to reach out to us and contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for nice presentation. 예, 박수로 네, 부탁드립니다. 발표의 주된 내용은 먼저 역시 질의응답 시간이 있으니까요. 혹시나 질문 있으면 해주시고 그리고 한국어로 질문을 해주셔도 통역이 다 영어로 번역해서 전달하니까 그냥 부담 가지지 말고 질문해 주시면 되겠습니다. 혹시나 질문이 있으면 손을 들어주시면 됩니다. 네, 질문 먼저 받도록 하겠습니다. 네.
네, 강원대학교에 다니는 학생인데요. 그 캐나다 같은 경우에는 그 수소를 많이 하셨는데 수소로 전환을 하는데 캐나다는 전통적인 산유국으로 알고 있거든요. 그러면 만약에 그 석유 그쪽에 석유 산업 사람들이 그 반대는 없었는지 만약에 반대를 했다면 그걸 어떻게 풀어 나갔는지 궁금합니다.
Thank you very much for your question. That's an excellent question. Canada is actually an energy producing country. We've been producing many types of energy. We are a major exporter of clean power and clean power technology. We are in the nuclear industry. We export uranium and also nuclear technologies. And we are also in, as is mentioned, in the oil and gas sector. We export a lot of natural gas, and that actually is growing, supplying many areas with an alternative to coal. And what we're seeing in the oil sector is actually quite remarkable support for hydrogen, because due to the investments that have been made and the technology advances, the oil sector can actually see a path forward in a carbon neutral world by exporting Canada's fossil fuel resources as hydrogen. And again, this is looking at, and they're very actively involved in both lowering the carbon intensity of the production of their oil products and also in the export of low carbon intensity hydrogen. So we're seeing this as actually something that is a path forward. And frankly, it's an area where, if given the massive quantities of hydrogen that are going to be needed to decarbonize our economy, I personally think we need to engage the energy sector broadly, not only the renewable power sector and the nuclear sector, but also the fossil fuel sector, in order to get the quantities of low carbon intensity hydrogen that are going to be needed to fully decarbonize our economy.
네, 되셨나요? 네네. 캐나다는 그 석유 산업이 수소 산업으로 전환에 대해서 굉장히 긍정적이라고 합니다. 탄소 배출량 감축, 그 저탄소 사회 그런 데 대한 니즈가 상당히 사회적 합의가 잘 되는 것 같습니다. 혹시나 질문이 있으시면 하나만 더 받고 마무리하겠습니다. 예, 여기 부탁드립니다.
네, 저는 한국의 에너지경제연구원이라고 하는 데서 수소 관련된 국제협력 의제를 지금 발굴하고 있는 일을 하고 있습니다. 그런데 이제 캐나다가 굉장히 좋은 조건으로 수소의 미래 공급원 국가가 될 수 있다고 이렇게 판단하는 근거를 오늘 이 자리에서 제가 하나 확인을 했는데, 매우 싼 저비용의 수소 공급원을 가지고 있다고 말씀을 쭉 하시는데, 캐나다의 그 전력원이 수력 기반으로 많이 지금 이루어져 있는데, 그 수력을 향후에 활용을 해서 소위 수전에 할 수 있는 전력을 생산을 한다고 한다면 우리나라와 매우 아주 유기적인 그 협력관계, 수소 공급원으로서의 협력관계가 가능할 것으로 판단하는데, 수력을 활용한 그 수소 공급 능력 내지는 잠재력을 캐나다 스스로는 어떻게 평가하고 있는지 그 얘기를 좀 듣고 싶습니다.
And as we like to say, hydrogen is a very inclusive technology because, of course, you can generate hydrogen from any energy source. Yes, Canada is fortunate that in many parts of the country, our grid today is very green. We have an abundant hydro resource. And that gives us the opportunity to, and it's a low cost resource, and that gives us the opportunity to produce hydrogen electrolytically at a low cost. We are currently doing that in Quebec. There are 2 major liquid hydrogen plants operating in Quebec using Quebec hydropower and are exporting throughout North America. And we have projects underway now where that hydrogen is used to make renewable chemicals, and those chemicals are starting to be exported. So we are seeing an emerging opportunity to take advantage of Canada's low-cost renewable energy in the production of hydrogen. I should also mention that in addition to our hydropower, we have a growing wind resource as well, which is gives us an opportunity for low-cost power from that source as well.
예, thank you. 질문은 이것으로 마치고요. 간단하게 좀 더 이야기를 드리면 캐나다의 방금 여기 이제 발표했던 캐나다 수소산업협회가 캐나다 좀 대표적인 그 기구고요. 그 이외에도 캐나다 대사관 쪽에 연락하시면 상당히 이 수소나 연료전 쪽은 협력을 잘 할 수가 있고 캐나다는 굉장히 적극적인 것으로 알고 있습니다. 네, 다음번 이제 발표해 주실 분은 미국 캘리포니아 수소산업협회의 빌 엘릭 부회장님께서 미국과 캘리포니아의 수소와 수소전기차의 상용화 추진 방향을 주제로 온라인으로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 준비되면은 바로 시작하도록 하겠습니다.